You're listening to the LA Football Podcast.
Welcome back to the LA Football Show here on the Mightier 1090 ESPN Radio, LA Football Network. I'm your co-host Ryan Dyer, joined as always by Jamal Badney. This segment, this Chargers segment, What Up Bolt Fam, brought to you by our friends at BetOnline. Use the promo code BELIEVE to get a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Use your desktop or mobile device to go to betonline.ag, where the game starts. We are using this time, Jamal, to get into this Chargers team coming off back-to-back losses against two very good opponents. We had a great live show after the Chiefs game, had a lot of fun with fans, and obviously there's a lot of disappointment around this team. Me and you were kind of on the other side. Like, there's obviously disappointment. Obviously, we think this team is better than 5-5, but it's not all doom and gloom based on how these games went, based on the injuries, based on guys coming back. But now this week, Jamal, Chargers, Cardinals, this is a must win. If the Chargers lose this game, me and you will be singing a very different tune, because this is a team that the Chargers, even with injuries, are a better team than, are better coached than, have the better quarterback, have better, receivers is debatable based on injuries, because if you got D-Hop on the Cardinals side, and depending how healthy Keenan or Mike is, but across the board overall, this is a better Chargers football team. Welcome back from the break, first of all. How do you see, and we'll get into really how this game goes, but first initial thoughts on this Chargers versus Cardinals game?
Yeah, Ryan, I think you said it best there. This is a get well game. Let's be real about this situation, especially with the possibility and the probability of Kyler Murray not playing in this game. You're going to have Colt McCoy starting under center with the Cardinals. This has to be a win. Yeah, you're at 5-5. We talked about the importance of closing it out 5-2 and building that momentum to make a run in the playoffs. It starts here. This is a very winnable game. This is a game now to get that second half of the season started the right way. You've got Herbert, you've got Ekeler, you have some combination of Keenan Allen and Joshua Palmer and Everett and so forth. So there's plenty here to be able to win. It really feels like Cliff Kingsbury's got 1 foot out the door, half a face out the door, some limbs out the door. He just looks clueless and lost, seemingly on a play-over-play basis. There seems to be a lot of locker room dissension with the Cardinals as well, with the attitude of Kyler Murray even before he got hurt and the dynamics there. And you've got some veteran leaders like Hopkins coming back from missing extended time, and then J.J. Watt trying to be the glue that stitches all of this together. But just too much dysfunction on the Cardinals side of the house. Obviously, they had a big win against the Rams a couple of weeks ago, but this is a whole different animal. I think as long as the Chargers protect the football, have a relatively clean game, this really shouldn't be a problem. And if it is a problem, and if, God forbid, they lose this game, then, yeah, time to bring out the pitchforks and unleash, your frustration. But until that happens, I think this is a very easy victory, truthfully, for the Chargers. Get to 6-5. And then build from there.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to ask you kind of your 3 keys to victory for this Chargers team. But while you're thinking over that, what'll be interesting in the preparation side, Jamal, is obviously Chargers play the Chiefs twice a year. They're in the same division. And obviously the Cardinals play the Niners twice a year. They're in the same division. But the Cardinals also played the Chiefs, and the Chargers also played the Niners. So there's going to be a lot of film study from both coaching staffs where they can kind of dissent different tendencies, different philosophies, the way defenses run against different sets, because both those teams, being the Chiefs and the Niners, run similar offenses, but also very different offenses, both a stem of the West Coast offense. But obviously Andy Reid's put it on steroids with Pat Mahomes and made it much more vertical and exciting. And Kyle Shanahan has done a lot of different zone concepts, especially now having a Jimmy G type quarterback, but having the arsenal of weapons that he has with Debo and Christian McCaffrey and Brandon Ayuk and George Kittle. But you look at the tight end positions, very similar. So it's going to be really fascinating to see how these coaches, Brandon Staley and Cliff Kingsbury, really dial up different defensive schemes, different offensive schemes, speaking more to Joe Lombardi on offense for the Chargers, because they have the film in front of them to really lay out a good game plan of what works and what doesn't work, since they've both gone up the same common opponents. And obviously every week the game plan is a little different, but I'm really interested to see how these first kind of 2 to 3 series go, because that'll show how the preparation was the week of.
No, Ryan, I think you said it best. And that's the beauty of having the common opponents, to sort of understand tendencies under similar situations, both situationally in terms of time, score, and down, but also schematically. And so I think that there's going to be a real opportunity here. The things I'm looking for, Ryan, is a couple of things. One is I think this is a Keenan Allen kind of get well game. I'm looking for 10 plus targets to Keenan Allen to see what do we really have for the stretch run. And is he going to hold up as a wide receiver one for the stretch run, or is there still rust, and is there still a situation where we're going to do more wide receiver by committee moving forward, just given where he is? It's too late in the season for him to really get to peak form again. So I'm looking at a 10 plus target game for him, hoping to see how he responds. I'd love to see him in that 6 to 8 catch, 100 plus yard type of environment statistically. I'm looking at that. Second thing I'm looking at, Ryan, is, again, it always begins with the running game and the level of balance. I'd love to see balanced play calling again. I thought that was one of the things that really worked out well in that Chiefs game. They were exactly at 30 and 30. It need not be exactly 50%, but definitely looking for offensive balance and an emphasis on that run game to maintain that balance and not abandon it and allow the Chargers to get off to a fast start and give the Cardinals really no hope for this to be a potential upset. And then the last thing I'm really looking for, Ryan, is the run defense. And this has been an area where the Chargers have been susceptible to the big run. And so how do they tighten that up? Because you've got Colt McCoy, 15-year vet backup. He's not really going to stretch the field vertical. It's going to be a lot of dinking and dunking down the field, and they're really going to rely on that running game and play action. So if you can take that run game away, it's really going to force the Cardinals, with the personnel that they have, to do things that they don't really want to do. And so how do you limit Connor and those running backs and really have a tight game there defensively? So if they can address those 3 to 4 keys, Ryan, this should be a very easy game. But if they have deficiencies in those areas, then things can become problematic.
Yeah, and the one kind of challenging thing that and this is with any NFL game when it pertains to questionable starters in terms of injury, is, and this bodes a little bit in the favor of the Cardinals, is because it is not official. I've seen reports that Kyler Murray is potentially expecting to start, but also, Colt McCoy is still taking first team reps. So and that changes the game plan significantly, because obviously those quarterbacks are so different. And so from a Brandon Staley perspective, he has to really prepare his defense for both quarterbacks, because Kyler Murray, what he can do with his legs, obviously coming off a hamstring injury and still questionable, is not, even if he plays, probably is not 100%, but is still dangerous outside the pocket with his legs. And so that really changes things schematically and what they do depending on who starts. So it'll be really interesting to see how they prepare for that. And if Kyler does go, obviously that changes the emphasis on what they do from the linebacker position, whether they bring in, safety blitzes, how they utilize Derwin James in the box and whatnot. But still, this is a better team. Regardless of who's under center, the Chargers should still win this game, and they should still win this game handily. Now, kind of the way the Chargers have played is they don't necessarily blow teams out for whatever reason. So I'm not expecting necessarily a blowout, but they should at least control the game for almost all 60 minutes and really be in the driver's seat, controlling the narrative of the way this thing is going. And I think when we see what, Niners obviously now being fully healthy on offense, they're a different kind of breed with those skill set players. But what we were able to see what them do in Mexico City with Christian McCaffrey and Debo, like if the Chargers can kind of just implore Austin Ekeler in that similar way, which they do very well and they do very regularly, but sometimes get away from it a little bit. And Austin Ekeler is, for as great as he is, he's not Christian McCaffrey, but he is great. And he is very good in the pass catching game. And so I think that needs to be a really big emphasis because I agree with you. I want to see Keenan Allen get 10 plus catches, but using Ekeler in that way can really take the pressure off Herbert and Keenan, and then opens things up for Herbert and Keenan. If everyone's barreling down, thinking the screen game's there, the bubble screens, the zone run game, then it can open things up for Keenan. The other thing I'm going to say, and then I'll have you comment on this, Mike Williams, to my knowledge, at this point is kind of 50-50 to go. Have you heard anything different? I want to make sure I'm correct.
No, that's what I've heard as well. Yep.
50-50. So this is what I would do. And I know roster spots are, you only dress 46 on game day, and you want all 46 to be able to have an impact. But let's be real. Not all 46 ever do have an impact. There's, 5 or 6 guys that never get in the game. They're like backup, sometimes that's the backup quarterback, the third string, whatever it may be. So no matter what, unless he is a 1000% can't go, I'm dressing Mike Williams. But I'm not playing him unless we're in a situation where somehow the Chargers are down and it's like, okay, we got to have it. Mike, give us, we need 10 plays out of you. Because having Mike Williams in there adds so much to the offense. Even if he's not catching the football, just having him out there requires so much focus and respect from the defense that if the Chargers got in a situation, maybe in the third quarter or fourth quarter, where they're down 3 actually, or they're tied, or for whatever reason, they're not playing the way they should be, then you implore Mike Williams out there. But if that situation ever comes, I'm still dressing him, but I'm not putting him out there. I'm saving him for later in the season because they need a healthy Mike Williams to have a true, playoff run. And if he's out there like last game and on his first play re-aggravates the ankle, or then we're just in for a long, long stretch not having him. So I'm dressing him because this is a must-win game, but I'm not playing him unless we get in that must-win situation.
Yeah, Ryan, I think that's a great point. And if you look at just last week, a couple days ago in Mexico City, how did the Niners really exploit this Cardinals defense? They strained the defense through the threat of deeper plays and more explosive plays in the form of Brandon Ayuk. Ayuk only had 2 catches in that game, albeit both for touchdowns. But it was that threat that then opened up the middle of the field for George Kittle, for Christian McCaffrey, for Deebo Samuel to really do the lion's share of the work and methodically move the ball down the field. And I think if you're the Chargers, you have to think a little bit similarly in thinking about Keenan Allen, not just in terms of direct production, but him as a threat, Mike Williams as a threat, to then open up that middle of the field again with Ekeler, with Joshua Palmer, with Gerald Everett to be able to do that lion's share of the work moving forward. So I think the situation is set up for success for the Chargers to be able to do that without having to tax Mike Williams too much, if at all, or with Keenan Allen for that matter. Although I really want to see Keenan Allen have an important role and usage rate being really high because, like you said, Ryan, this is a must-win game, but this also has to be a must-win game that propels you to go on a run, and you're not going to be able to go on a run without Keenan Allen being a true wide receiver 1 moving forward. So I couldn't agree more. I think the Cardinals, I think that their linebackers, I think the middle of their defense is very susceptible to consistent chunk plays, and I think it's just a matter of Herbert having enough time in the pocket and making the right decisions down the field, and I'm sure that he'll do that.
Yeah. So, all right, well, let's kind of end the show with this and with some speculation here. Came out on Wednesday, and I'm sure this report came out this week because, ironically enough, both these teams are playing. But Sean Payton reportedly or hypothetically, whatever you want to call it, eyeing his sights on either the Chargers job or the Cardinals job if he makes a return to the NFL. Now, obviously, I think Cliff Kingsbury, unless something drastic happens, I would be shocked if he's retained by the Cardinals after this season. He's been given a pretty long leash. He kind of had his pick at quarterback. Remember, they had drafted just Josh Rosen in the first round before he came in. He gets hired, and they used their number 1 overall pick on Kyler Murray. So he kind of picked his poison, and they haven't really been able to do anything with it. And the Chargers side, I think unless this thing completely explodes and the Chargers go on like a 4-game losing streak and undoubtedly miss the playoffs, I do believe Staley will be back, and I do believe this team will make the playoffs still, which that for sure will retain Staley, but anything could happen. And so there is a chance of that happening, and there's a possibility of if Sean Payton is interested, which what coach wouldn't be interested if you get a coach Justin Herbert, live in Los Angeles. Chargers are getting a brand new facility down there in beautiful Hermosa Beach, El Segundo area. So it's a very, very good looking opportunity. Your thoughts on that report, rumor, whatever you want to call it?
It makes a lot of sense, Ryan. I think that we talked about this a couple of days ago. I think Sean Payton sees himself in that sort of Phil Jackson-like role in the NFL of how can I take a diamond in the rough and a young, talented quarterback brimming with athleticism and creativity and the ability to run or the ability to throw really well. And then how do I mold that young man into a championship quarterback with the knowledge that I have? And so when you look at the Chargers and when you look at the Cardinals, they both fit that mold. Kyler Murray is a mercurial talent. Some have said that he's a little too undersized to play in the NFL, but guess what? Sean Payton had a pretty successful decade-plus run with another guy who was presumably too small to play the position, who was on the Chargers and got traded for Phillip Rivers, and that worked out really well for the New Orleans Saints. And the fact that Kyler Murray is signed long-term indicates he's not really going anywhere for the Cardinals, so you have to build a system around him that's effective. And then, of course, when you look at the Chargers and you see Herbert and still on his rookie contract waiting to get extended, of course he will. And how can Sean Payton come with that talent, with some of the talent around him, and build the Chargers into a championship team? So I think it makes a lot of sense. And Ryan, I don't think this is sort of an indictment on Brandon Staley. I think this is sort of an opportunity to see what happens. I think even if the Chargers kind of go to 9-8, make the playoffs, or 10-7, but they're sort of winning kind of shaky games and on the way to that playoff run and maybe lose by a significant amount, and you need to kind of take that next step. And Sean Payton's out there. I mean, Sean Payton arguably is one of the 5 best coaches in the NFL the last 20 years. You could make that argument. If he's out there, it doesn't necessarily mean that Brandon Staley has to be bad or screw up or be inept or go on a losing streak. Sometimes you just want to make the upgrade because you believe so much in that proven commodity. So I think Brandon Staley could be very successful over the next 2 months, and they still look to make that move because I think at least for the near term, Sean Payton is such a great coach and such a great fit for Justin Herbert.
Yeah, it's interesting because I agree with all that, and I want to make sure I'm not misheard here because Sean Payton is a phenomenal coach, great offensive mind, did some great things in New Orleans. At this point, would be an upgrade over Staley just based on the experience, based on the resume. So I'm not saying that. I don't want to be misheard. But to me, you have to be 1,000% certain that the results will be substantially better with Payton and Staley. And I say that because of this. Don't forget everything I just said. Sean Payton, phenomenal coach. Sean Payton, his entire coaching career, or at least after his first 2 seasons, had arguably a top 3 quarterback of all time, Drew Brees. 1 Super Bowl win in 20 seasons, a 9-8 postseason record. Great playmakers on defense and offense. Great coordinators on defense and offense. Great franchise, great fan base, full support of the ownership, full support of the city. Everything at his disposal with the New Orleans Saints. Phenomenal regular seasons, made the playoffs just about every single year, 1 Super Bowl. So again, I'm not saying at this juncture he's still not an upgrade over Staley, but who's to say that everyone's acting like he's Bill Belichick here and has 8 Super Bowl appearances and 7 wins. It just doesn't. So I get the upsetness with Chargers fans, and I get why they see the roster, they see what they built in the offseason, they see these continual games where they seem to underperform or get out coached and whatnot. But you also have to look at the overall totality of results. And for as great as Sean Payton is, you're not getting a guy that has 8 Super Bowl rings. It has more rings than he has on one hand. He has 1 with arguably a top 3 quarterback to ever play this game. So still think Sean Payton's great. I'm sounding probably like I'm hating. I'm not. Sean Payton would be a great fit. I just want people to be realistic in what you're asking for here. And you have to be 1,000% certain than what you have right now. This would be not just an upgrade in terms of like the resume, but an upgrade in terms of the results coming with it.
Yeah, Ryan, I think that's so spot on and so credible there and rational in your thinking. And I think there's one additional dimension as well is, are you getting the most out of your talent? And I think that's also the conversation of, yes, he only has the 1 Super Bowl, and I completely agree with you. But I think there is sort of an acknowledgement that he probably got the most out of his talent in the Saints. There were some years there in the NFC where there were just some stud teams with Rodgers and others where they were just going to kind of blast through the NFC there. But I think there's a little bit of an acknowledgement with the Chargers community and I think the organization that this year they haven't quite gotten enough out of all of their talent, especially on the offensive side of the ball. Now, injuries has a lot to do with that. So I am not sitting here and pointing the blame game on Staley or Lombardi. I think they've had a pretty crummy hand dealt to them this year. But I think if you can get closer and the path is a little bit clearer and more tangible, of how you get the most out of your talent, especially Chargers keep talking about this notion of all in. I don't really see them as all in yet, but this can be another step in that direction of demonstrating an urgency to wanting to be a perennial contender. So I completely agree with you. I think the conversation has to be not necessarily outcome-based, but process-based. Where do you have firm confidence that when healthy, Staley and Lombardi are going to get the most out of their talent? And if that is the case, you got to stick. No question about it. But if you feel as an ownership group, as a management group, that maybe that's not the case, then you got to think about Payton. I think it's a more nuanced conversation than just wins and losses and what the fans think and all of those things. I think it comes down to that fundamental question.
1,000%. So that's all the time we got. Both think the Chargers will beat the Cardinals in a must-win game. Stay tuned. We'll have some Rams talk at the bottom of the hour.
You're listening to the LA Football Podcast.